England get the win over Australia, folks. 25 points to 17. We're going to go through some key events and stats, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on the game we just saw from Suncorp, which, to be honest, is usually a bit of a fortress, but not to be. England came out of this game firing. The Aussies did have a wee bit of a patch where they had the momentum, but for the most part, I thought England were pretty good value for their win. And the Aussies, goodness me, how many guys did they lose to injury in this game? It's a concerning amount for Dave Rennie for Game 3, but anyway, that's a kind of bridge for him to cross next week, and England weren't without. They're kind of walking wounded as well. Genji kind of set the tone for this one, didn't he? When he flattened Michael Hooper with one of the first carries of the game. And the first high ball that they sent Freddie Steward's way from Marcus Smith was a wee bit too deep. Didn't really test Geordie Petaia. So, kind of a bit of a hit and miss for England early. But speaking of Petaia, he's the first of many Wallabies casualties in this game. His tackle technique leaves a bit to be desired. He puts his head into someone's hip and goes off for an HIA. Thankfully, we do not see anything from him for the rest of the game because the guy was out on his feet. He was absolutely away with the fairies, so that guy needs to have his brain taken care of, so it's a good thing we didn't see him come back on. We obviously wish him a speedy but safe recovery because, it looked like a pretty bad one. And then England, they doubled down on this quick start of theirs when Billy V manages to convert on a really well set maul. They kind of went to the front of the line out for that one and managed to drive the big number 8 over rather than kind of setting for the hooker to go at the back. It was something a bit different. Really well converted. So 7 points to 0 England. And then the penalties Australia concede just add to England's score line. I mean, 10 minutes, it's a penalty. 14 minutes, this time it's Tupou conceding a penalty. I think it was kind of like a no-arms thing at the breakdown, 13-0. Genji did give away a soft one by kind of rubbing Nick White's face into the dirt. I mean, he's a halfback. Genji's a prop. You can kind of understand there's a bit of animosity between them. But Nick White did well to kind of not retaliate, because that would have been picked up on, I'm sure. But the refereeing team ended up giving Genji a penalty for that one. And, I guess Nick White would feel a little bit satisfied that at least, because I'm sure he had a word to the ref about it, at least they took notice of him. But that being said, a big England scrum sees Tupou penalised anyway. So it's still mostly going England's way, I felt. And then it gets worse for Australia when Perese gets yellow carded for a deliberate knock-on. It's one of those ones where you stick your hand out, it hits it. He's going for it one-handed. If you go for it one-handed, you're probably going to get carded if you don't grab it. So we saw earlier on today, if you watch the Tongan game against Samoa, the Tongan halfback went for a one-handed intercept and he managed to get it. So it's absolute risk-reward. He only just got it in that game, but there you go. So, with Perise's knock-on, deliberately 16-0 because they go for the penalty. And then it gets worse as well. Lolesio gets absolutely smashed by Jack Nowell, who seemed absolutely pretty fired up, did Jack Nowell. So, the Wallabies just couldn't get out of their own half. England's kicking game was absolutely pinning them back. They just couldn't get out of dodge. The big hits weren't helping. Paisami has to put a try saver on the aforementioned Jack Nowell because it was just all England. They managed to find some space wide. But, Paisami, if not for him, I think that would have been a try. They end up getting a penalty from it a few minutes later anyway. So, it's crazy dominant. It's 19-0. 19-0 away from home. England are absolutely bossing the game. However, finally the Wallabies managed to get a scrum penalty that gets them into England's half for the first time in what seems like the majority of the first half. And pretty much their first chance down the England end, they managed to score, which is clinical because the Wallabies haven't really been at the races. That one is, a few big carries. Paisami, big carry. Angus Bell, big carry. And eventually Tupou is the man who goes over. And then not long later, England lose one of their best players in Itoje having to go off because he got smashed by Paisami when Itoje was going in for the tackle. So he doesn't come back on either. I don't think his looked quite as bad as Petaia's. But obviously you still need to take care of yourself. And go through all the processes. England finished the half by missing touch before half-time, so they lose a little bit of that momentum, but for the most part, they've been really good value for their lead. Run meters is 176 to 98 in favour of England. England have got 56% possession, 58% territory. The Wallabies have conceded 9 penalties to 3. It's been all England. England's main area of concern is their tackling, which left a bit to be desired at the end of that first half. Second half, another Wallaby goes off with Perese going off. He's jumping for a high ball. His knee just seems to kind of buckle. Something must have popped when he hit the ground. He's had issues with his other knee. This time I think it's his left knee. So he has to go off and be replaced by James O'Connor. And James O'Connor, if you haven't followed Super Rugby, is only coming back from a pretty long injury layoff himself. He looked a bit rusty, to put it mildly. England end up with a penalty on 42 minutes. They kicked that one, so it's 22 points to 7. Wallabies have got a lot to do to come back. But just when you think they're not going to do it, they do manage to wrestle a bit of momentum back. I mean, Kerevi ends up finishing it off, and they were still putting his big boot into use this game as well. Maybe not to the same effect as last week, but Aussie get a scrum penalty. That leads to a maul. The maul goes through some phases. They get advantage. Tupou flattens Marcus Smith at one point. Good on him for going in for the tackle. He didn't shy away from it, but he didn't provide an effective tackle. But eventually, wide pass from Lolesio to Kerevi. It's a well-worked try from the Wallabies. It's the second try and the only other points they would get barring a penalty for the rest of the game. So 22-14, that's game on. Sio goes off not long after he's come on, which is pretty unfortunate because it means Angus Bell, who's been running around like a madman, is going to have to go 80 minutes. But Leota picks up a knock. He's able to go on. But despite all that, Marcus Smith gets a yellow card for another one deliberate knock on. There's another one where his hand's pretty much just sticking out there. Don't put your hand out there if you don't want to get yellow carded, although I understand it's just instinctive. I mean, that's the way the laws are at the moment. And Aussie up for the 3. That's on 53 minutes. So 17-22. It's like the first time it's a one-score game in a long time. Remember, it was a 19-0 lead. So it's a pretty solid comeback from the Wallabies. They've managed to wrestle a decent amount of momentum out of this game. Nick White looks to have kicked the 50-22, but they ruled that it was taken back. The TMO tells the ref, because he's looking at it saying, are you sure? But she says it was the phase before that they didn't show, but she seemed pretty confident, so we'll take her word for it. And then Cadeyrn Neville goes off with a knee injury. So the injury list is honestly getting pretty horrendous for the Wallabies. But from about this point, England take the game by the scruff of the neck and they don't really look back. They win a scrum penalty in their own 22, so it's a good chance for them to exit. When the Wallabies have got a chance, they throw the line out and not straight, so they're kind of the masters of their own demise there. Nowell with another big carry. They end up getting another penalty. Do the English boys, so it takes the scoreline out to 25-17. That's the final scoreline. I mean, there's still some more good plays. Courtney Laws with a big defensive shift, wins a penalty at the breakdown. That one's pretty much game over because there's 9 to go. England do miss a penalty on 74, but then Bell, who conceded a couple of scrum penalties, gives one away on 78 minutes, and that's definitely all she wrote. So England are kind of able to see this one out. So yeah, like I said, the Aussie injury list is a wee bit long. They will be concerned about the penalty count, which ended up being 16-10. And 4 of those were Tupou, 2 of those were Bell. So the props kind of getting pinged a little bit. But like I said, I don't think Bell expected to play as long as he did. Obviously, Sio only came on for a few minutes. And Tupou tends to be a bit of a penalty magnet. Him and Genji kind of went back and forward. Run meters finished 295 to 366, so England dominate there, but they did have more possession, 54%, more territory, 52%. It evens out a bit compared to the first half, but I mean, key example, look at Billy V. He has 69 meters carried. He was a busy boy, but he made like 14 carries or something. His meters combined more than all the Aussie starting forwards combined. I mean, Valetini had 10 carries. He had 10 meters. He was really well shut down. I mean, just that's a demonstration of how up front the English guys just absolutely had dominance in this game, and it's pretty hard to win a game if your forward pack's on the back foot. So, I mean, Bell, he makes 14 from 14 tackles, but like I said, he had to play a lot of minutes. Gave away a couple of penalties. Nowell, 4 defenders beaten, 46 metres, 11 from 11 tackles. Busy shift from him. So, yeah, good game. Good game from England. Farrell kept the scoreboard ticking over even when Smith was in the bin. And it got to within 1 score. England never quite looked like they were going to go behind. Every time we looked at the Wallabies, we're going to wrestle that momentum. England will find a way to kind of stifle it. And, yeah, we'll see what kind of team the Aussies can field for next week. Remember, they've got an Aussie A side, which has been playing the likes of Fiji and Samoa recently in the Pacific Nations Cup. So they do have a second team which is out there playing. So they will have some guys who are pretty much ready to go if they fly them back from the Pacific. So we will have to wait and see. Series goes to a decider, which is what you want when you're watching. If you're a neutral anyway, Aussies would like to wrap this one up, but it's still alive. You guys let me know your thoughts on this one. Key events, key moments, underperformers, who did well. Does that take the pressure off Eddie for a week? You guys let me know your thoughts, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.